Abby, are there any procedural things we need to do before I open the presentation?
Just roll call and, or call to order and then roll call.
And I'm going to call to order just a joint workshop. All right, so I'll call to order a joint workshop with City of Hayden, City Council, and Planning and Zoning Commission. And guests.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Council President Roeder?
Yes.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yes.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
And Councilmember White is absent. And for Planning and Zoning Commission, Chair Taylor?
Yes.
Vice Chair Howard? Yes. Commissioner Erickson?
Here.
Commissioner Prickett?
Here.
Commissioner Bemis?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
And Commissioner Gibson?
Here.
Did I miss anyone?
I don't think so.
We do have quorum for both.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. Thank you for taking time out. I want to set the tone, and you'll notice that the setup here is a little gimmicky. It's like that on purpose. I believe a serious conversation needs to be had between City Council, Planning and Zoning, and the people that bring us projects. I would like to change the thoughts in our head from an us versus them, or an us and them, to a we, because at the end of the day, we are all Hayden, by where we live and by how we shape our city. Why are we here? Because it's been all but said, more politely and less directly, just tell us what you want to build. Nobody's going to come out and say it because that's too direct and probably too rude. But the fact is, our answer isn't that straightforward. If you ask the people that, hi Maggie, if you ask the people that I talked to when I ran for mayor, they want homes for their children and their grandchildren. They can't afford to buy their house today. I can't afford it. I have a pension, I have a job, and geez, I have this high-paying mayor job too. And if I had moved here today, I could not afford the house I live in, which is just a simple 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath house. I do not live in a mansion. I could not afford my home. But if we talk to, and I'm not picking on Tom, but the people that Tom spoke with, they want single-family homes on larger lots. So the answer isn't straightforward. The answer is to what to build in Hayden. It depends on who you talk to. So there's some give and take. I will show a little humility. None of us here are elected, and I also believe an overwhelming percentage of our citizens don't build homes for a living. So we didn't move here as housing development experts. And again, this feeds into why are we here? Why are we having this conversation? I wrote some notes here. They stole my notes view, so I apologize. I'm looking down a little bit. I believe Hayden needs a partnership with our building community. We need solutions, and we need to build mutual trust. Here's my caveat for the whole meeting. Nothing today is presented represents a bias. Our commissioners, our city council, and myself will follow the laws, and we'll follow the standards to rule our land use decisions. So how is the meeting going to progress? It's a little bit like speed dating. We're going to have 4 rounds, and we're going to pull up people to sit at a table and be intimate and look each other in the eye and say, this is what's on my mind. This is what we need from our development community. And development community, please tell us what you need from the city. I realize you may not have all the answers today, but again, today is meant to open up the conversation. So I will leave this slide up when I finish. I can tell you right now, this is what we don't want. I know the Hayden Prairie out there is a lot of blank spaces, but I can almost guarantee that regardless of who voted for whom, nobody wants to see this. This to me is an unintended consequence of the old single-family homes on a large lot. You end up with this huge suburbia, and that is not the direction I would like to see Hayden go. So what would we like to see? On the left, we need homes for people who work. Kiki did a wonderful article in the paper. Has everybody seen this? I don't know how many of you read the paper, where she listed the quartiles and the different jobs. Most 2 working person families aren't gonna be able to afford a $500,000 house. That's just a fact of life. And again, depending on who you talk to, I think there's a need for that. I'm not suggesting that we go crazy and build dense and all the other, red flag words out there. I'm simply saying that as we think about our developments, as we think about the housing that we're building, that we think about everybody and not just some of our citizens. So we need areas in Hayden that look like this. We need areas in Hayden that look like this. And we need areas in Hayden that look like this. To that ends, our Planning and Zoning Commission and our City Council have been working on some draft, these are not final, draft new goals and policies for the city. From those, assuming they're implemented, our ordinances may change to support those. What are the big differences? Development considering and implementing adequate parks and open leisure space for neighborhoods. We want to have recreational opportunities that complement an associated neighborhood. We aren't objecting to annexation, but we'd like to prioritize developing land inside our city borders. We'd like to see neighborhood pedestrian and non-motorized connectivity between neighborhoods. Simply put, if I'm in a neighborhood and I want my kids or I want to ride my bike, I should not have to sit on the sidewalk or ride on a main street where I get hit by a car. We need some connectivity. We need some, when we think about development, it's not just puzzle pieces, it's the whole puzzle, right? Everything's connected. Not literally everything, but puzzle pieces are. And obviously, number 6, we threw it in there, it's important to us to protect our environment, whether that's the aquifer or trees. Again, we don't want to see that big sprawl slide I showed. In support of the goals, we have policies, and they pretty much just get a little more specific to what the goals are. Parks, transportation, making that adequately. We still want to transition between business and residential zones. We want a variety of housing for infield projects. And number 5 is kind of a big one. Park, leisure, and natural spaces to be incorporated into all future housing development projects. So the idea of I have 3 acres and how small can I chop it up and stick nothing but homes in there, we're asking that to change wherever we develop. And again, we might have to change our ordinances a little bit. We might have to change how we think about the laws that we have for our city. But we want some open space. We want some leisure space wherever we build. Number 9, we want to keep higher density housing options along primary transportation corridors, but we want to protect our established neighborhoods. We don't want it to encroach into a bunch of single family homes, throwing up duplexes and what have you. 12 is kind of a repeat there, and 15 and 16 talk to the environment. Again, since these are draft, I'm not going to go into deep dive detail. I'm just simply showing you that the city is doing work to support the conversation I'm hoping to have today. What I would like, if you all would do this, is after we talk today, I know folks' brains are going to spin, they're going to think of things. Please get a hold of Abby and Lisa at the city. Come back in a couple of months and let us know what you need from the city so that we can continue moving in this direction.
Alan?
Yeah, go ahead.
By chance, I know when my group gets it, I'm going to ask you to put up the policies one, but also, are you able to put up the future land use map? You have it on there somewhere?
It's not part of my slide deck, no. So if I could ask Emily and Joel to come up. So Emily, since we just met, and since I don't think you've ever met Joel, tell us what you do.
I'm Emily Bradley, the Executive Officer of the North Idaho Building Contractors Association.
Okay. And NIBC does what for the public?
So we are here to protect and promote the building industry.
Okay.
And we do that with advocacy and fundraising with large-scale events, the Parade of Homes and Home and Garden Show.
Okay. Well, Joel works on planning and zoning, which is our citizen commission. There, for those that don't know, we have a citizen commission that screens land use decisions before they get to city council. They're not employees of the city.
We're just here for fun.
It's service, it is. And it provides a layer between city council and applicant. Emily, I will share with you that I have a concern that we don't have enough smaller housing options that 20 and 30-year-olds who work can purchase, not rent. I'm concerned that when we build homes, they're bought by folks with a lot of money who then turn them into business, and housing is moving from a utility, something that we should all have, like clean water and clean air, is turning into a business. And I don't think that's the direction Hayden needs to go. I'm not blaming you for that. I'm just expressing my feelings for that. I would like to see, when folks come to the podium at a city council meeting, some creativity. I believe that the project managers and the agencies that work with people who swing hammers can guide people who buy the land to say, you know, I realize you could do this, but let's think about building this other thing instead. Let's think about paths and leisure space and connecting neighborhoods. I believe you guys have great influence. Lastly, I'll share with you, I am worried that building smaller homes might simply elevate what entry-level home prices look like. If we start building, say, a $280,000 house in a year, it's going to be a $400,000 house, and then the $400,000 house is going to cost $800,000, and we're going to exacerbate a problem that is already here, in my opinion. I would like to see partnerships with Habitat for Humanity, PAHA, and other third-party administrators who can apply conditions to buyers such that houses aren't flipped, such that we could control our rental, our population. And again, I'm not against capitalism, I get it. I just think that to the extent you penetrate a housing market to where folks, I mean, my neighbor's kids still live with mom and dad and they're well in their 20s. I'll say it, that's wrong. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Joel?
Yeah, so a couple of my concerns have been the new development that's going, or most likely going to happen up on Hayden and Hutter. It's a deadly intersection, and it's definitely not developed for construction vehicles, let alone more traffic. And so one concern I had is where we're putting these developments on roads that I don't personally think can handle the traffic or the construction vehicles or anything. And then another thing was talking about more affordable housing for younger home buyers and everything is can we make them into neighborhoods that look nice and houses that don't look like they're all stamped the exact same and just a very monotonous row of houses that, you know, don't look good. So having affordable housing, like Alan was saying, my wife and I work and I have a pension, and we can't afford to buy a house, and we have a 3-bed, 2-bath, and so getting affordable housing would be nice, but then also having it look nice in a way that you want to go to your home, you want to go back to Hayden and not just, you know, stay out all day and just go there to sleep. So yeah.
And I think a conversation needs to be happening on what affordable housing is. I met with a builder, and I asked for a potential solution on a piece of land, and I was given a denser solution than I asked for. I was asked to have all the houses built at market value and set aside 3 or 4 at a price point that was $40,000 more than I asked for. I'm not blaming the company. I know they have to make a profit, but at the time I didn't feel like I had a partner, and I didn't feel like I was heard. And again, that's not your fault. I'm just letting you know what we'd like to see happen. And again, I know that means some changes that we need to make here in the city. I'm hoping they're not too destructive. Again, obviously we don't want to, you know, it could go wrong many ways, and we want it to go right. Do you have any comments or questions for us? And again, I know I'm putting you on the spot, so that's why I invite you guys back, you know, in 60 to 90 days if you want.
Definitely, I definitely appreciate the opportunity to come back. We hear you and we feel the same thing. I know we can talk about that, but it's not only on a local, but a state and national level on the attainable housing crisis that we're facing. So I definitely want to bring these back to our builders and developers, and then we can have that open conversation and bring back more options for you.
Okay, is there anything else?
We just appreciate being brought to the table and being a part of the conversation. That means a lot to us. So thank you for that.
Okay. All right, should we shift then?
Sure.
All right, so Tom, Brandon, Ben, and Steve, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
make a point of order when we discussed that we limit the conversations to not specific land use applications that potentially are in the queue for either a decision being made, or an appeal period.
Okay, so yeah, please, no specific land use decisions.
This is bothering me.
It's interesting that we got there.
Thank you.
It's Steve, right?
Steve.
Yeah.
Good to see you again. Brandon. Oops,
Steve.
sorry.
Ben. And Tom. Ben. Sorry about all my clutter. I'll put it down here.
So, what I was just talking about originally, are we supposed to be? Yes. Yeah, but hold on. Before we get talking, my main issue here is I'm new to this. This I feel like I didn't really understand the whole premise to what was going on. So I just quickly was gonna see if we're all on the same page between the four of us.
If you guys flipped around a little so folks can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, for those, something I didn't think about. Thank you. Yeah.
Oops. There we go.
Like what I knew my role was to be talking about today was environment. That's kind of where it ends. That's all I understood walking into this meeting today.
Okay.
So,
You're not limited to that. It's meant to be a productive conversation between the folks setting up new houses and whatever's on our mind. I just tried to give it a little structure,
okay,
but I don't want to tie your hands.
got it. So I don't want to start this.
Can I ask a question, the city administrator? I know you want us to stay away from specific land use actions, but may I talk about something that occurred before I was on the city council?
I just would caution you that the reason I made that comment or that statement was geared more towards protecting the rights of the applicant.
Got it.
And the city, if, in the event that we are appealed at any point. So I would ask that you talk in concepts, but not specifics,
Okay.
at your best.
Who wants to go first?
I'll start.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, so I think I know most people here, but I'm Steve Circle. I'm a private land use development engineer, have been for most of my career. Mr. Mayor, 2 points you mentioned in your introduction that really hit home to me is, what you're looking for and what you need. While we also have this beautiful environment, I mean, it's the whole Pacific Northwest, realistically. I'm born and raised in Yakima. I've been here all my life in this Northwest area. I moved my kids here in '02 to finish, well, my family to finish raising my kids, because where we were living in Vancouver, Washington was just, it was what you saw that you don't want. And so a few years back, I held a seat on Kootenai County Planning and Zoning for about 8 years. And what you're really stating to kind of bring all the comments, in my opinion, what you stated was it's managed growth. And managed growth starts, as we are right here, with everybody in the room from both sides. And I don't want to say sides, and I agree with you. It's not sides, it's a team. Because we all care about what we're developing, including all the engineers here in the audience, along with the people that live here. And I do have 2 sons that are in their 20s and they can't afford to buy a house either. So I get that. And so I'm kind of green. I didn't know this was the topic. I didn't know I was going to be speaking. Lucky I showered today. But I do appreciate being involved, and I'll have a lot more to bring as I absorb what everybody talks about here today, and then we'll come back, and I think this is a great step. So I applaud you.
Steve and I have actually met before, and it was before I came on the council. It was over an issue that kind of motivated me to run. And I noticed a couple deficiencies, or some deficiencies in the existing city code, but before I get to that, I want to qualify my perspective and give context. I came from a place not long ago where environmental regulations were so obtrusive, so burdensome, and the overreach was so great that it made it impossible for small and medium-sized developers to even make a living. And I remember very relevant experience where the county council had decided that anybody that had large acreage, they by fiat decided that half their property was off limits to development. And I found that to be offensive. So I have that perspective. But one thing I've noticed in current Hayden City codes when it comes to environmental protection is it's a set of mays. So it's optional. The city may choose to enforce things, not shall. And I think that in this day and age, it doesn't matter what political affiliation we are, what our relevant background is, whether we grew up in the country or grew up in the city, we can all agree that there's certain kind of like standard principles on protecting the environment. And I have observed by looking at it myself that the county has a specific set of requirements, and they aren't obtrusive. They're very reasonable. And I think that should be something that that Hayden should mimic and put into practice in its city codes. Because as Hayden grows, if it grows in certain areas that surround our current city limits, this question will definitely come up again. And I mean, who doesn't love the natural environment that we have here? And I'd like to see that protected for generations.
I'm Brandon Bemis. I'm on the Planning and Zoning Commission. I've been there for about 5 years, and my background is not in the environment. I currently work for Corlane Tractor. I sell tractors for a living, but I do get to work in the environment quite regularly. I agree. I think we all understand that it's something that we want to protect. A lot of people have moved here because of the lakes, because of the rivers, because of the open areas, the trees, the fresh air. The water is so good. I drink it right out of my tap. Those are all the things that I've just grown up having and gotten totally used to. So the people that have moved here from out of state don't recognize, or do now recognize, that's the way of life here, and that's why people want to be here. So absolutely, protecting those things, having access to boat launches and being able to do the things that we want to do without infringing on others, very important to me. Absolutely.
I'm Ben Prickett. I've been on planning and zoning 4 or 5 years. Lived here, be 10 years next week. I agree with Brandon. When I think of environment, for me, it's when I'm out on the lake or, going boating with my family. When I see what seems like over 10 years now, more garbage in the ditches and the boat launch not quite as pristine as it used to be, or stuff thrown in the lake, or if I'm hunting and I'm out in the national forest, seems to be more garbage, and and having moved up here from Houston, Texas, to say it's a bit of a culture change, an environment change, to go from one of the most polluted metropolitan areas in the country to this is absolutely one reason we should all appreciate living here. But so I guess from a planning and zoning standpoint, like you said, any political stripe should want to protect the environment and can maintain what we have here. So, oftentimes in the back of my head when we're talking, we have something before us. It's like, is this going to be just more garbage in the ditch? Is this going to be our water going to be slightly not as clean because we're packing more and more people in? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I've got really young kids, and my wife and I were discussing yesterday, it's like, if they ever want to move back here after they get back from college or wherever they do, realistically, at the pace we're going now, it's not going to be reasonable without help from us or whatever the case may be is. And yesterday, I was looking on Realtor, and countywide, 19.4% of the homes, single-family homes yesterday in Kootenai County were over $1 million, almost 20%. And you look, I kind of watch it, like you look, like those are the homes that are like pending. Like there's more homes pending at north of $1 million than there is homes for regular folks. So ultimately, you wouldn't think that would drive up the price of the homes under $1 million, but it is. And this slight uptick in interest rates here in the last couple of years to try to curb inflation has been detrimental to people who are right on the cusp of affording a home. And they were probably clearly going to be in a 30-year mortgage, and they might have two people employed, mom and dad both working, and now that's just slightly out of reach. So the last thing we want is a fiefdom here, where it's just a bunch of people moving in with outside money and, like you said, controlling the livelihoods and interests of others by, having, just multiple homes that they rent. Like it's very hard to balance, and it does weigh heavy on me as well.
How many staff do you have at your stores that make less than $30 an hour?
Probably only, out of probably 25 employees, probably only 2 or 3 make less than that. But I will say that other than a handful of people out of, like I said, 25 employees, probably myself and 2 others don't rent. And these are automotive technicians. And, just, I can't speak for everyone else, but I've got automotive technicians who, make anywhere from $70,000 to $115,000 a year, which is, I feel good for, blue collar, and that, not to get into that industry, but that has been going up because there's lack of technicians. So that's what's happened. But I feel like if you make $115,000 a year or $90,000 a year, that home ownership should be in reach, and it's not even close, which is kind of disheartening because you want to try to help these people live a better life, but you're sort of capped at what you can afford to pay people at the same time. So,
Well, and think about the traffic too. If they're either renting or living out of town, then they're driving in and they're driving out every day. And the second thing that most people complain about over the last 2 years is traffic. So if we can't afford for working people to live here, we're making our little roads that weren't built for a huge city even worse.
Good point.
Anybody got anything else to add to this?
I don't know, do you think that was a good enough?
It's fine, it's what's on your mind, right?
Well, I think we should also just at least admit it's going to be an issue, if not now, in the future, is the preservation of the aquifer. And how that problem is solved, I'm not proposing today, but speaking to somebody else who has knowledge on sewer, is the fact that we may not be able to empty in the Spokane River anymore with our treated waste, so it goes into the aquifer. How much of an impact does that have on things? Just bring it out as a topic, a subject, something that we should acknowledge as part of the equation.
Okay. Any comments? Thoughts?
Well, when it talks about, you got to, when we're talking about the environment, we want to preserve the aquifer. And what I obviously have heard testimony of that many times. And I'm not saying that's not a concern by any stretch, but there's engineering and practices that are in place for that. I've read the aquifer study that was done years ago, which was newly published when I moved here. And knowing the depth of where that aquifer is, and have read through the reports, extension of municipal water systems, Avondale, set up individual wells is definitely that right direction. By doing that, you got to annex property in and develop it, create those homes, extend those municipalities. On a wastewater side, the same thing. Now, HARBs, ultimately, it's going to have to be upgraded. And by doing that, it's going to be dollars from development and funding that's gonna do that, you know? So, I mean, it's a weights and balances thing. And like this forum here is great, because then that's how we get to that next step. You know, managed growth, that means acceptable growth that meets the needs of what everybody wants. But also then it can be affordable for the developer to be able to do what he wants to do. Instead of making it too difficult for, like you had stated, the smaller property owners or even the large property holders, that they got so much to do, they can't afford to do it. Well, the cost of that development clearly has to go off to the cost of the lot. Because the developer isn't going to be a developer if he can't at least continue to support his family. So,
All right, thanks, everybody.
thank you.
Sprawl and density.
Did Connie join? I talked to Connie earlier. She's just feeling under the weather, so.
All right.
So you and I get to talk to each
You
other.
have to have two.
No, where's
You're missing.
Jeremy? He's coming. Come on up.
How we doing?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Might I suggest, and I could be overruled, but that we kind of go around the table and hear from everybody, and then I'll speak last.
You do like the last word, don't you?
Well, it's because I hope. Oh, look at this guy. I don't know. Either way, no, I hope that what I hear, I will then be able to relate what kind of the city's position is as best as I interpret it. To hopefully maybe answer some of the concerns and issues that
Just
you bring.
tell each other what you'd like.
Yeah.
Like, here's what I'd like from you. That's the easiest way to do this.
So, I know most everybody in this room, Jeremy Terzulli. I work as a land use specialist, mostly for Olson Engineering, a few other people. I've been in this room a gazillion times. It's funny that Connie couldn't be here today because the irony of it is, and not sure everybody around here knows it, but the developers or development community, there's a lot of correspondence that happens. We are aware of other projects that are coming. We do talk, we're competitors, but we compare notes. We ask what's going on in this area. How'd your conversation go about the lift station in that area? What about, there's a lot of communication that happens, and I feel like, and I think I've pointed this out at several different meetings, that I feel like then I get a 15-minute snippet to try to sell the council on what we're trying to propose. And oftentimes I wonder what you guys are aware of, what I'm allowed to say, not say, because I do know stuff is happening. I know of, 20 acres over here that's being slated for this particular project or that project. And I think it's probably going to be a question for legal at some point, like what are we allowed to share so that you guys have a complete picture of what's going on, right? So we're talking about sprawl. And Alan, I think, touched on some of the amendments to the comp plan that you're talking about, that every development must have open space. Well, that's very loosely defined. If I know of a 40-acre piece a half a mile away that is implementing a park, maybe we can avoid some of that sprawl by allowing a little greater density on this piece and creating a green belt over to that park. And then that green belt connects to another neighborhood that's maybe a one-off 5 or 10 acre piece where we can allow a little greater density because we know the park as part of the master plan is part of this project. And I do have a little bit more to say, but rather than just spill out everything that's on my mind, maybe we can go around twice and do little snippets, because I think sprawl and density are a huge concern of mine as well. But I heard it brought up here. I think I've tried to tug at heartstrings in this building before. I do have an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, an 11-year-old. They're all sharp as tacks, and I think they're going to get good college degrees and want to possibly move back here, but we're all seeing the same thing. I don't think they'll be able to afford to come back, and that is a fear I have. So with that, I'll pass to Mary, and maybe we can make it 2 times around this table.
Well, and I think that it's, just for sakes of conversation, I think that it is, we're not suggesting, I don't think anybody's suggesting that everything should be obtainable to, you know, the kid straight out of college or straight out of high school and trade school.
Absolutely.
But most of us right now could not buy our own homes. And even Ben's saying, you know, he pays good wages, and they can't. So I understand that's a national problem, but we need to deal with what it looks like in our community.
Well said.
Oh, why, thanks, Mayor. So how do we do that here? I see that there have been several developments come to P&Z where I see a genuine shared concern and effort on developers' part to try to think outside the box and to be creative in ways to make housing attainable. Affordable is very subjective, so we'll say attainable. So I see that there are some, even within our city limits, and again, affordable is subjective, but I can see effort trying to be made. None of us want to sprawl out. We want to stay within our city limits and move as it's truly necessary. But we also don't want to put townhouses in the middle of a single-family neighborhood either, when there's that open 5 acres. So there's some respect and balance there as well.
Agreed.
I noticed this weekend with the beautiful weather, my husband and I did some driving around. And I noticed something. So I live in a neighborhood there's 38 homes. There's a blank piece of property and 38 homes got built there. And I've heard lots of other people say, what a nice neighborhood that's become. But in all honesty, it was pretty blank and vanilla. And now the trees are starting to grow. And yeah, it's going to be a really nice neighborhood. There are developments that have been proposed that are 2 per acre, 4 per acre, 6 per acre. And that's not unreasonable. But when the acreage is larger, everybody just sees the total amount. And that scares people off. That makes people uncomfortable. To where the smaller developments, even 50 and fewer, that doesn't seem to make people as uncomfortable because it's not so many all in one swath. Is that making sense to anybody?
It does, and it kind of bridges to my point that if we were looking at a whole area and not this 10-acre piece and that 5-acre piece, all of a sudden, if we take this whole big area and say, what is the density of this 160 acres when you add the park, the road, a potential green belt, a preservation reserve for that, like what is the density in this big quadrant? What's our plan here? I think that's kind of what you're alluding to, where if I bring a 5-acre piece and they just went for max density in the underlying zoning. But if there was a collaborative effort and an aggregate that we were looking at in an area, maybe approving a series of townhomes over here seems pretty darn reasonable because these are all 10,000 square foot lots up here a little further away from the corridor, you know, kind of tucked up against this established neighborhood. But I've already had my opportunity. I was just sort of
No, it's
riffing off of what you
conversation.
said.
No, it's a conversation, so that's good, that's good. And I actually like that if we were looking at a whole section
Yeah.
and kind of plotting out what that might look like fully developed. Not that anybody's saying, okay, now this whole thing is going to be developed. No, it's still going to go according to market-driven, need, that kind of stuff. But does that still honor property rights if I happen to own the section of that section that you're setting aside as reserved?
That's a great take.
So that's where it's such a balance, but I agree, to look at it in a larger picture might actually
And that's where
be
I
helpful.
think, you know, Fonda could weigh in and say, maybe because once stuff hits P and Z, it's public knowledge now. And so people are going to look at the plans. And I've always questioned, can staff sort of show the council, well, generally, yes, there are some preliminary and
There she
pre-development
is.
meetings.
She can weigh in now.
There are some pre-development meetings occurring in this area, and maybe we can circle back to developers and say, hey, if you reserve a certain amount of lots that are going to be 10,000 or greater, we can offer up a little density bonus in this area of your property, and you'll be satisfying that need in this whole quadrant, and so we can work with developer B to say, we're gonna be asking you to focus more on 6,000 to 8,000 square foot lots if that's, and it becomes more of this forum, right? More, I don't know the legalities of that, because I think Alan pointed it out in the beginning of this whole thing, is there's been an us versus them mentality right now, and it's not, it's having an adverse effect.
I apologize for interrupting. Jeremy, I'll share with you a concern on your point. I'm not disagreeing with it. We've seen parks that were promised by people who were buying homes suddenly moved. And then not only just moved, but where they're moved to now isn't going to be developed by the time these people's children have flown the coop.
Right.
So I don't want to use the word bait and switch, but we would need, at least the thing that's going through my head is we need to bake in some kind of, I don't want to say guarantees, but some kind of a plan that kind of stuff doesn't happen where, you know, we're told this and this separate area is going to be like that, but then that separate area gets sold to somebody else and suddenly now that's not the plan. And you know what I'm saying? That we need to incorporate some trust if we're going to start looking bigger picture, just to.
It's a great start, though. This forum's a great start to building that trust, so.
And I think that's why in our reworking of goals and policies, we have put in, we'd like to see some open space, some green space in each neighborhood, so that becomes the culture in our community.
Yes.
That we value open space, we value areas where children can play as they're growing up, not in the 10 years that one next door is going to be built. You know?
Sure.
And be part of phase one of the development instead of part.
Phase 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
We'll just have to tighten up some of those development agreements. And, I mean, did you guys all see the bond that was floated by the county recently to preserve the open space? I feel like that had we could have got some traction. It was just horribly launched. They're not collaborating with you and Post Falls and Rathdrum and Coeur d'Alene I mean, when I go down to Boise and I see how they were able to preserve that green belt along the river, it blows, like, how did they do that? It's amazing. You can leave downtown and go for 15 miles and you only ever deviate away from the side of the river at a few points. You go past Boise State, and I'm thinking some version of that in this community to tie, you know, Crawford Park through a greenbelt down to Stoddard Park, all the way down to Tubbs Hill. I mean, that ship's probably sailed. It's a little too deep. But you get where I'm going with this? As we move forward, why aren't we communicating with the county to preserve that.
We should go to Rattler Mountain as they're developing that as almost like a Tubbs Hill.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And we've got the real estate to get us there from here on a bicycle, not a car. We can do it. And so the way the county just sort of haphazardly, we're like, we're floating this bond to preserve open space. I just thought it was a delivery problem, maybe.
I think, and I've heard a lot of conversation about the bond because when we talked to people about it, and everybody wants it, but and you're right, it was not run out very well, I don't think either, but I still hear people, bottom line is, and we see it in a lot of things. We want it, but when it comes on, do you want to pay for it? That's a different story. And I think that's kind of what we saw with that. A lot of people weren't sure of exactly what it was, how it was going to be managed and the like, who was going, there's as is increasing, a lot of mistrust. Well, how are we going to know that if we pass it, that these people here are going to do this with the money and not do this with it? There's just such an increasing mistrust that it's poisoning almost everything that happens. And I think that is a perfect example of people, we want better roads, we want better this. Okay, it's going to cost more money, and we put it on a ballot, will they vote for it? And that example was a no. Maybe if it was reworked and rerun in a different presentation, it may work.
And if there was collaboration between the municipalities that I think that was missing in that,
Keith, what do you have to say?
A lot. I'm a software guy. I wish I could just download. That doesn't work that way. I think the forum is good. Not opposed to that. I think that I've got 5 kids, adult children under 30. Not one of them can afford to live here, so I'm aware of that. However, I've traveled professionally quite a lot. I've lived in other countries. I chose Hayden on a spreadsheet. I made a spreadsheet as a software guy of all the places that I could retire, and Hayden scored the highest. And I took in a lot of metrics to make that decision. And whenever I talk to people in the community, they want Hayden to stay Hayden. And I think that unless we are going to somehow magically wave a wand where we say, you can only own one property here and you have to live in it a certain number of months out of the year, you can't rent. Unless we're going to do that, you're not going to accomplish what we're talking about here. It's flowery, it's pretty, it pulls on the heartstrings. It's not realistic, because you can go to Tokyo or New York or London or any of these places that have rent controls and all these regulations that government just made it worse. And so we're not going to regulate our way into my children being able to live here. Sorry. Otherwise, we're going to have to trounce on property owners' rights big time. I don't want to do that, because I own property here and I don't want my property rights trounced on. So I'm not going to be the hypocrite that does that. As far as density is concerned, if you increase density, the only thing you're going to accomplish is smaller houses with bigger price tags that are owned by people that are investing in rental properties, and you're going to get more renters. And that's all you're going to accomplish. My kids still won't be able to afford to live here. You'll just raise the price tag on smaller square footage. So I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm just telling you, dollars rule. I love capitalism. Capitalism has raised more people out of poverty than any other financial system in the history of the world. When the tide rises, all the boats go up at the same time. But we are here as volunteer citizens to try to regulate and make sure that property owners' rights are not intruded upon. And so for us to try to figure out how to make people make smaller houses, it's going to have the opposite effect. My dad was law enforcement, and the more rentals that we end up with, the more police officers we're going to have. It's not popular to say, it's the truth. So just being a realist here, that's how it works, guys. If you go to Jeremy's clients, they're going to be given option A, option B, and the one that makes the most dollars is the one they're going to go with. It's just how it works. I own a business. I have payroll I have to make, and I have to make decisions based on how's the best chance of me making payroll. Because there's families that depend on me to be able to have food on their tables. And so I'm not a charity. I'm a business. And I try to do, good by everybody the way that I'd have them do good to me. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is a welfare state, and it doesn't work. It produces the opposite. Sorry.
So one of the things that you said has been my concern, and that's why at one of our decisions, I asked that the developer look for options, because I do see that the lower price tag means that that investors want to swoop in and buy those properties up, which is unfortunate, because I think that we do get developers that really honestly want to do right by the community and meet a need and make a more attainable housing option for people who live here. I don't know, but I do know that there are mechanisms that can keep those properties as opportunities for people who live here, locals.
I wrote it down, and I think I saw Maggie and Kiki were both here, and they've been working through that. But Keith makes a great point. Nobody wants to be like, what's the percentage? Do we vote on it? These will be rent controlled, and these will be deed restricted. Deed restricted for how long? And then he's right. In some ways, I do think your point is we can find a happy medium when the compromise is made. A good compromise means both people are a little pissed,
Can we talk about Coeur d'Alene?
Yeah.
Okay. Texas Roadhouse. Go just. Can I talk about Coeur d'Alene?
I would not stick to your.
Stick to our topic.
There you go.
Okay.
Stick in
There's
concepts.
I attended a housing meeting in Coeur d'Alene, and there's a property that they're trying to make affordable for people. And the way that they were going to do it is they were going to have the people not own the house, not own the land, only they were going to own the house, and they were going to have a price at a certain point. And anyway, they put some time on it. And the bottom line is, the only thing that they created, those houses are standing today, and the only thing they created is a trap for the people that live in those houses. Those people, they don't get the benefit of the property values rising so that they can even make a lateral move. If they ever move out of that house, they have to move out of the community, because they don't get when the tide goes up, they get left underneath the water.
I believe, and again, I've been somewhat involved with that, and it's not zero. I mean, if I'm understanding what you're talking about, there's a percentage, anything over, they're allowed some appreciation up to a certain amount. But the benefit of that is they wouldn't have gotten into it in the first place if the arrangement had been what it was. So they're allowed to come in when they want to sell the house, they sell it, they can make X percent, which will keep the price low for the next person who may be in the same situation.
No, after the time is done. That's not how it works.
I'm not.
Let's play the movie all the way.
We can't, I think we're branching off somewhere a little bit.
I'm just saying, I'll put in a time restriction. The only thing put in a time
That's how it really works.
Kiki wants to have a visit.
Okay, yeah, so
Let's play the movie all the way through on Keith's train here, though, right? Let's just say for round numbers, there's 1,000 square feet in city limits that is left of R1 zoned land that's entitled today. And we put nothing but 8250s on those, plus the roads, plus the whatever park is required. Now the developer says, I didn't get the range that I wanted, the numbers aren't quite as good, I'm gonna push back on the city and I'm gonna put bare minimum into the park to make a profit. Now we've got exactly that sprawl. We've taken it right out to the incorporated limits and we've done 8250 everywhere we can because that's what's there. We know there's still a profit in there. I'm not saying you're wrong. I actually believe that a lot of what you're saying is correct, but to play the movie all the way through in the other direction, that we shut down anything that's not an 8,250 square foot lot with whatever bare minimum park the city's making me put in there, now we just have really expensive houses and we've sprawled all the way out to the incorporated limits anyway. I'm not saying it's an easy answer. It's just, we've got to try to steel man the other argument and then take 60 or 90 days and come back and say, I thought about what you said and here's how I can poke holes in your idea, and you can flip it and say, here's where I can poke holes in your idea, and that's where we're going to get to something resembling a solution, because it's a freaking pickle. And it keeps me up at night. I'm not lying to you when I say I sit there and I'll have a notebook by my bed and something will come to me, I'll write it down. It's not easy, but I see it both ways. I really do. And yeah, I don't know.
I would love if my kids could live here, honestly, that'd be great. But I'm just saying, Hayden is a very tiny little place in a great big world. And we have national and international policies that are affecting our currency. And we're not going to compensate for that. Hayden's not going to fix that problem. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying I have the solution, but I am saying that what we're proposing here, it's going to have the opposite effect. It's going to get snatched up by investors, and we're just going to have a lot of rentals. It'll be Vail. You'll have apartments that are $5,000 a month.
So I'm wondering if something that would help that, and I don't know, you tell me, because you deal with more developers and investors than I ever will. Do they prefer buying an entire fourplex? Or are they less apt to buy condominiumized projects where they have to buy the individual ones, or does it not matter?
It's all about the money.
Yep.
Keith's 100% right there.
Single family.
And, I mean, again, it's not about sides here. I'm just supporting what he's saying. In the real estate world, because I deal with investors, I'm also a licensed commercial broker on top of other stuff that I do. They're divesting in California, Oregon, and Washington right now in droves because the tenant landlord laws there are so
Ridiculous.
horrible. But if we can help through CC&Rs, work with groups like what Maggie and Kiki are trying to do, not do exactly what you were saying about controlling in a trust underneath and the structure up above is what they can own. I do think there's a solution where people can feel comfortable that it isn't a nanny state, that we're going to take and say that if you buy this home and you go to resell it in 6 months, that the CC&Rs, the HOA can buy it back. We can have some guardrails and backstops to say it goes over to this entity and it can only be sold back to somebody that's lived in Kootenai County for 2 years. There has to be mechanisms in place, and I just think there has to be no dumb ideas when we're talking about this. We've got to throw
Agreed.
everything against the wall and say, what can we make stick?
Agreed.
Because it's there.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try and go places here to talk about a little bit about what's been talked about. First of all, I have to preface it with the elected representatives here, for lack of a better term, are somewhat beholden to the citizens of Hayden, okay? And we hear from those citizens of Hayden. Granted, there's 18, 19,000 citizens of Hayden. We don't hear from anywhere near all 18, 19,000. We basically hear from people who, when they're directly affected by something or feel that they're affected by it, they're loud, okay? And a lot of times, admittedly, when they come, they don't know the statutes, they don't know the policies, they don't know the local land use, they don't know what they're talking about. Sorry to say that, but they don't. They've heard this and heard that, and they come up here and they, you know, type of thing. Okay, but still, we have to listen. We work for them, okay? And when the survey that we took, we were 1,300 people responded to it or whatever, and we were told that had it played out, that it was a statistically valid survey. And the people basically said, we want primarily single-family homes. Along with that, they also, 60% of them, acknowledge that we do need a variety of homes. Single-family, duplex, triplex, fourplex, even some mixed use, which are apartments with commercial underneath them. So I believe that the reality is, and I can only speak for myself really, I can't speak for any of the other elected, they will have to do it for myself, but I think that when it comes down to it, we all realize that we have to abide by the statutes and the codes and the local land use planning act and all of those type of things and the standards of approval and the like. And we try to do that. You talked about communication, and I've been frustrated by exactly the same thing. I've tried to ask, can we know what's in the pipeline? Can we know what's coming? And I've been told no, that whatever, until it comes to, like, say, P&Z and the like, that it can't be discussed because it is private in a way. Because if you start telling people, hey, you know, we're having meetings about this land over here, that land over there, I can see where that could become a problem. You who are not, you know, in the private world out there and in your business world, you can sit down around coffee and go, hey man, you know that 50 acres over here and that, and you guys know better. But our ability to really, and that is key. I think if that were able to be achieved, we could have a better opportunity to melt a beneficial, more beneficial actions. I've been asked for that. Density, try to. Yeah, open space. Density being tied to the overall area of the green space, it goes right along with that. If we knew that, yeah, we've got all this stuff and tied this project into that project, you're probably right. It could be worked better, but again, we can't. I think there have been some recent, I don't say recent, but in the not too distant past, there have been some creative projects which have been presented, and they've been approved. Okay, and it is just that kind of, it's a give and take. Okay, I can't talk about that one. Again.
Good catch, Ed.
Yeah, I know. All right. There are local, we talked about the local organizations, which I think, I don't think we need to demand, and I don't think that recommendation was a demand. It was a suggestion.
Was an ask.
Yeah, an ask. Please talk and see, is there a way? We're not demanding, but I agree. I think that's a good idea, that if legally things can be worked out where you can work with the local organizations to create opportunities for people who otherwise can't find affordable housing, attainable housing, I think that should be attempted. All right, how many of you have driven down Government Way by the cemetery there and seen what's going on? I've been told it's hundreds, I don't know how many dwellings are gonna be in there, okay? That kind of stuff is going to substantially, it's on our southern border. It's going to substantially affect traffic, government, and those people moving north, as well as from our neighboring towns and their development. We are almost in the center, and we are severely affected by pass-through. People coming from all directions, and that's what the Hayden residents experience. They don't know, they think those people live in Hayden. They think, what the heck's going on here? Hayden must be doing all this and that. And that development, if it's what I'm hearing, is going to provide hundreds of dwellings. I don't know the full thing of it, but we have to somewhat consider its effect as we move along here. All right. Regarding what Alan presented first, policy number 9. And again, I'm only speaking for myself, but those were proposed and policy changes stuff that, and most people know that my big thing has been the higher density stuff. Okay, I agree. We need single family. We need some duplex, triplex. We need a variety of housing, but we need to be very aware of our higher density stuff. Okay, and where it's put. Okay, if you look at the future land use map and what we're talking about on that policy 9 is that primary transportation corridors. And I look at those as being primarily east, where we have open undeveloped space, Lancaster, Hayden out there, maybe a little bit left on Prairie. And that's where the higher density stuff is right now, okay, on those. I believe that that's where that should be. If we go putting it in the middle of residential places like, you look at, I don't know, Miles, Orchard, Lacey, Dakota, Wyoming, into established neighborhoods with what are currently, and someone described them once as old rural roads. They don't have sidewalks, they don't have swales, they don't have center lines, they don't have curbs or anything like that, and they're narrow. I don't feel that the people of Hayden want, and don't feel they've told me, they don't want higher density stuff with people dumping out ingress, egress out of those in existing residential neighborhoods. So I think if you look at this policy 9, if it is adopted, I think gives the developers an idea that, okay, if we want to do that kind of stuff, we need to be looking at the primary corridor, the larger roads, the ones that are going to be, they're planned to be widened. They're going to be the 5-lane, Lancaster eventually.
But that's sort of counterintuitive because you're saying, we're here to talk about sprawl versus density or that interrelation. We do have to capture some of those infill opportunities as they present themselves. And we have to rest on the guiding documents, which are the traffic master plan and the comp plan. And if we aren't assessing the transportation plan, we're just going off of what we think. That's tripped me up at times in the past where I'm like, this is your guiding document.
That's what I'm saying, and that's why we're talking about, when we're talking about, that's where I want to use, not redoing, adjusting the current goals and policies. And if this, let's just say it is adopted, that higher density will be on these primary, that will then, I would be pretty sure, is going to translate into an alteration of the master plan and things like that. And I agree, I've quoted you. Just tell us what we can do and where we can do it. And I understand what you just said, the frustration of, well, wait a minute, okay? And that's what this attempt that council has been involved with, and planning, has been involved with the last couple of months, I guess it's been now, is to try and create goals and policies that they're going to send off to a consultant who will then look at them and compare them to the comp plan and all the different master plans, and probably come back and say, well, if you're going to do this, you need to make the adjustments there. And I would hope that that is the result. That we say, okay, we're going to do this, let's make these adjustments so that when you do come, you'll look at the transportation plan and go, okay, if we want to put this here, then we're going to put it, that's where we can put it. I get the confusion and frustration. And I think it's on all sides. It's on your sides, the developers and builders' sides, and I think it's on our sides and the residents' sides, the citizens' sides.
Sure.
You know, I can't tell you, I had someone just the other day sends me an email. What's going on what? This lot, large size lot in basically on the west, the west side of 95 in the residential area. And they're gonna do this, this, and this, and this. I'm going, well, you know, it's gonna create a moderate amount of traffic. It's not that high dense, but it's gonna create a moderate amount of traffic. And when people see it, they see themselves living in what was a quiet residential area, and now that they see it. So I think that it's real important that, and I know it's not easy to say or easy to do, but we have to kind of, and I'm impatient. I don't want to play the waiting game. But I think we have to play this out, the revised, possibly, goals and policies, the consultant, results from the consultant, changes to the transportation and whatever plans, if that comes in, and then hopefully, sometime not that far down the road in the scope of time, in the space of time, we'll be able to have you get have the building industry feel pretty confident that what it says there is how we're going to react.
You use a great word, because we've got no confidence that we know how you guys are going to implement policy 3 or policy. It's like, we're just spinning around. Like,
That's why we're
I don't
here.
even know what to think. And then when somebody throws a social media post out there that's completely misinformed, is misleading, and then we're battling upstream the whole way. It's like, first thing I got to do is get the general public who's shown up with their pitchforks ready to skewer me that you've got it wrong. Sorry.
Do you not have those problems in other cities in Kootenai County?
Oh, yeah. You guys are not alone. We're not in a bubble.
Oh, good.
By no stretch of the imagination. I don't participate in social media, so I get it secondhand, and I'm like, oh, man, I'm about to get it.
Could I ask a favor? I know this is
Sorry, we
good conversation.
took a lot of time.
Yeah, I would like to keep things going. If everybody's got at least most of what they wanted to say out, is that all right? I'm not cutting anybody off.
Basically just scratch the surface, Alan, but we'll do this again soon.
This is just the first.
Next time I don't want to talk on the environment, because this one sucks.
Thank you.
Oh, I'll go again.
So you're at the first or last.
Well, I guess I'll start with asking everybody to introduce yourself and who you represent, and then we'll go from there.
Gordon Root, I'm a real estate developer, Stafford Development.
Eric Olson, Olson Engineering, small engineering firm in Post Falls.
David Erickson, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Sean Taylor, Planning and Zoning. I think I've been on it 7 years now. I believe so, yep, 7 years.
And I'm about 7 weeks, so.
Good. I'm the president of the Hayden City Council. Been on the council for about 8 years. I also sit on the HARBS board. That's our sewer plant out on the prairie. And I also sit on the Hayden Urban Renewal Agency. So that's where my perspective is.
Excuse me. There we go. I can hear
Sorry,
you.
we missed part of
I can hear you now, okay.
All right, so anyway, I'm going to be like Ed. I like to be last, if that's okay. And I like what he did. So who would like to start off with whatever's on your heart and your mind?
I'll go. So I've been doing real estate development since 1984. And I will say that the ABCs of housing are attainability, balance, and choice. You have to have a balance of housing in the marketplace. It has to be attainable, and what's attainable for one person versus the other are different, and what they want in their different life cycles, and you have to respond to that. And real estate developers, it's a high-risk business. And we respond to market forces that we're reading the tea leaves 30 to 36 months out or more at a time. And that's how we kind of determine where to grow and how to grow with the community. So how you hit that balance and choice? Well, first of all, your attainability. And when we look at attainability, and we'll call it affordability, for affordability in the marketplace, it takes volumes of housing. It's supply and demand. Market forces are at work. And if you have a restrained supply of housing, you will have increasing prices that are exponentially ahead of the market demand. So you have to have the volume of housing. So how do you control the volume of housing, and what do you need? And how do you attain what you're needing to create for the community? And the real thing is, the planned developments or master plan communities will bring the volume that you need, as well as the balance and choice of the housing. Now, we talked about the environment and preserving open space. When you're looking at open space, if you're doing open space in expansion areas that can be master planned, that will include multifamily, a transitional multifamily being townhomes and or some sort of triplexes and duplexes, and then move into small lot detached housing. That is a big deal that I think that people need to look at if you want to create affordability in the marketplace, is small lot detached, because it really comes down to where do you want your open space. In our market dynamics say that the people that live in Hayden want their open space in their backyard and on their side yard, rather than a centralized park. So that's why people go toward these larger lots. So what does sprawl, right? Everyone hates density and sprawl. We're talking about both in attaining the balance between the two. And how do you, come around toward an infrastructure? So development that can be large enough and create this balance of housing will be able to also provide open spaces and parks. And you have to look at the expansion areas of, we can master plan this versus an infill development. If you have an infill development, someone comes in for 15 lots, it's going to be really hard to take away one or two of those lots, because that park becomes super expensive. And will we go from 8,250 square foot lots to 5,000 or 6,000 square foot lots in order to open that open space so people can get outside and play with their kids on a top lot, or create the corridor which is interconnected? So development does foment, or is kind of the driving force behind infrastructure development. And I'll say the one that needs to be the leading charge, because it kind of backs everything up literally, is traffic. And what I'm amazed at is how much pushback there is on the Hutter Road bypass concept. I mean, it would dump the traffic and north and avoid all the traffic that's in here, but then people say, no, if you build it, they will come. Well, we aren't the field of dreams, and we need to build it so when they do come, that we can be ahead of the curve on traffic. So I think the roadways and the Idaho Department of Transportation, I will tell you from experience other places, knows how to build roadways fast. And they do it really well, and they build big roadways. I mean, 41 is a classic example of that. And the Hutter Road bypass, I think everyone in the room should kind of say, let's go, come on, let's get this thing going. Because that's going to avoid a lot of this traffic that goes on here. Other than that, the infrastructure, it really, you can create public-private partnerships. It is designed, and the system is designed, and the code is designed to have the developers develop what we need to develop, what we need to put into the ground, and then we have the city of Hayden overlooking us, saying, okay, now you did it the way you said you'd do it. Now give it to us, and that's good. But then there's a payback system if we're able to maybe front other dollars through SDC credits. So there's cost recovery. There are things that are built into the code that work.
Keep going here. All right. So I am a land development engineer, which I feel like gets kind of a bad rap. I went to school, I got the same degrees as the people that are working in the same companies, and I feel like because we're involved in these land development projects that we sort of get pigeonholed as you guys are just trying to make money for your developers, and certainly some of that's true, but we have our engineering ethics to adhere to as well. I bounced around a little bit since I moved to North Idaho in 2005. Last place I worked was a company that did primarily Idaho Transportation Department jobs, and I guess maybe they build them quickly, but they don't get to construction quickly. Right. They take forever, right? And that was really frustrating to me, just the amount of regulations. I didn't like seeing in some ways you like to see the enormous fees that your company is charging and getting, but I saw so much inefficiency, things getting redone over and over again, that type of thing, projects taking forever, not being able to see what you designed actually getting built. So I always kind of liked land development engineering because you design it, the funding's there, and it gets built. And you get to see it being built. What I've witnessed in the city of Hayden is I just don't see a whole lot getting done. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be offensive, but I don't see a whole lot of projects getting done, a whole lot of public infrastructure projects getting done. So yeah, some of that's getting put on the developers as it should. I'm seeing some of this inefficiency that I'm talking about creeping into the land development work where there's plans set out there that we're supposed to follow and we follow it and we're shot down or I don't like that. People, and not just in this jurisdiction, but I feel like the people that are reviewing our plans have an awful lot of authority over what we're doing. I think maybe some of the engineers in the audience would agree that it's like sometimes we end up with projects that are hardly our designs anymore because the standards are so oppressive and some of the people enforcing those standards are oppressive. It kind of takes fun out of it. It's no good. I mean, we're redoing our work, our budgets are doubling. If we can get our clients to pay for it, I guess that's okay for business, but it's not good for the bottom line. The developers have to sell their product for more in order for that end product to pencil. So ends up, I've found myself more and more in quite a few jurisdictions just feeling like I'm in an adversarial position with the people that we're dealing with. Makes work less fun. And I would say, like when I started my company, I wanted to have a well-rounded company. I wanted to be able to get into public work as well as doing land development work. But I feel like because I have to stand up for my clients sometimes that, and now I have these adversarial relationships, we'll forget about it, right? But I can tell you that my company and company that Ray works for and Steve over there, I bet you we could get some of these public infrastructure jobs done for a fraction of the cost of some of these larger companies that, we don't we don't usually get the work. It's just the way it goes.
Can I make one comment based on what he said? Yep. I think what Eric says is very, very poignant in that the time that it takes. So time is the enemy of all real estate transactions, and from a real estate development perspective, because usually there's leverage involved, which is an interest rate involved, and it's like Pac-Man. It just eats profits. So where are you going to get that from? The only thing that does is increase the price of the end product, because we have to recover costs somewhere, and so a more expeditious channel to get the infrastructure put in place will bring on more housing, which also pushes the pressure release valve, as well as takes away the the interest clock on, that the developer's paying, not only that's going to end up with a yield or a cost for the end buyer.
Yeah.
Go.
You good?
I spoke for a while.
So again, my name is David Erickson, part of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So there are two things I wanted to piggyback off of what you said and also what you said, Keith. So I just want to highlight where I came from and what I've seen. And I think it would be unwise if we don't learn from the past and look at history as a guide, as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel. So I came from an area that we normally don't like to talk about. I moved up here in 2020. So where I grew up from, it was fantastic. It was a small town feel, just like it is here right now. And I know some of you might disagree that it's not that small town feel like it was years past, but for me and my wife, we love the feel. And that's why we moved here out of every other city in the country. We specifically chose Hayden because of the way it was where I grew up. Where I grew up, my parents still live there, and if I were to buy a house in their neighborhood, it'd be about $8 million. So it's not attainable. I think the concept of trying to create or keep Hayden as a place where our kids can afford isn't the right goal. Because I don't think, based off of the way the world works, that that's something that when government gets its fingers involved, it ends up causing problems. So I just wanted to highlight that because I agree with you on that. And then with what you said, because specifically with infrastructure, where I grew up, you can't drive anywhere during the daytime. If you have to go across the city, you have to drive at night. You can't go during the day. From 8 to 7 p.m., you'll be in 2 hours of traffic. And so that's a lack of foresight, lack of many different factors play a part in that. So I see the comment you made, I think is very poignant, that Hutter bypass, people who are naysayers on that are not seeing what the future holds with the amount of growth and the way that when we do look at Hayden and as it grows properly, if we don't set it up for the proper infrastructure, it's going to be a nightmare for people who live in the city where people are trying to cross this way and that, and these main corridors are being bogged down as people are trying to move in, as homes are being built. It's only going to get worse. So I just wanted to at least express my, I don't have much wisdom, I'm only 42, but with what I've seen, I think there's a lot to be learned from the mistakes of other places when applied to the current problems at hand and how do we tackle those. So I just wanted to express that.
Sean Taylor, I moved here in '94 from Kansas, actually, so nobody yell at me. And I lived in Sandpoint for 11 years before I moved here to Hayden. And going back to the Hutter bypass and the length of time for projects, there's a Sandpoint bypass that they've been talking about since 1940, I believe. They finally built it in 2000. And to listen to people before that went in, you thought it was going to ruin Sandpoint. It was going to be the death of the town. It was going to be the worst thing they ever did. Well, it got all the truck traffic and all the through traffic out of downtown Sandpoint, and that downtown's thriving. And so I think that goes back to this Hutter bypasses that I think from an infrastructure program, that is going to help a lot of our issues. And I live east of 95, and there's a lot of, as I said, the old rural roads that don't have sidewalks, don't have swales. The city doesn't have the money to go back in and make those roads wider. So this side of 95 is always going to have some congestion, but it's also, for the most part, built out. There's a little bit of infill. There's some going in right now off of Miles that, I think 20 homes or so. But there's not going to be the big development on this side of 95. All of our growth is going to be to the north and to the west of 95. And, you've got Prairie, which is 4 or 5 lanes now. Lancaster can be that way. at some point Hayden will get there. But it's also, that's being driven by developers because they have to widen the roads when they build. So as that builds out, you know, it's what comes first, the chicken or the egg. The city's not gonna make the roads 5 lanes I have noticed that I actually drive 95 more now, since they time the lights better. I actually can catch 4 or 5 lights in a row and get around, so I've quit driving on Hayden Avenue, which is nice, because that is, as we know, not a pleasant experience. And I think in some ways the Hutter bypass, all that traffic goes that way, just take some pressure off of Hayden Avenue, or I'm sorry, Government Way right through town, because that was to be our downtown business corridor where people would walk and go to businesses. We take some pressure, traffic pressure off of Government Way, move it that way. But it's the biggest problem or biggest concern that people have is infrastructure and traffic. That's always the first thing they notice. That's the first thing they complain about. And so we have to, you know, accept that there's going to have to be some growth occur to pay for those roads to be done. The other thing that as we all sit here and talk about this, has become a big hot button issue for the citizens. Like, oh, we've got to stop growth. We have to stop this, have to stop that. When we were doing our comp plan, I kind of jokingly said, well, why don't we just make all the Hayden half-acre lots and that's it. You know, single-family half-acre lots. The homes will be $4 or $5 million. We'll get great tax revenue out of them. We'll have fewer people here. Is that what we want? So, I mean, I guess in some people's mind, maybe that is a way to go. But I think there is a need for, as you said, variety and affordability and those types of things, and a mix of housing, because you don't want a bedroom community where everybody has to come in. Again, that adds to traffic if they're having to drive in to work at the grocery store, work at the post office, work at all those places. So, but also, this becomes a big hot button issue as people notice it. I'm in real estate, so I've kept articles. I think when I moved here in '94, it was, can you believe this growth? 2002 or 3, it was the same thing. Oh my God, it's record growth. We've got to stop it. 2007, obviously, people were just up in arms. There's all these articles written about the growth. And it's kind of a cycle that we see here. We have 5 to 7 years of good, 3 to 5 of bad. And as it slows down, people kind of quit paying attention to it. And I think it's our job as we sit here to, when's that next growth coming? Talking to the developers, saying, where do you see the growth going so that we can plan infrastructure properly to meet that and get ahead of the curve.
So to that end, the thing that the anti-growth contingent catches on to in a lot of jurisdictions is that if they choke off infrastructure development, that they see that as a way to thwart future development and growth. So they'll do everything they can do to start choking off transportation infrastructure, water, sewer, you know, all the water's private around here anyway, but you know, they'll start trying to choke off the ability to develop. And the infrastructure is, I mean, you got to keep planning. Like you say, you have to plan way on that time horizon. That's what the future land use map is all about. It has a lot of sound planning principles on it, like the higher density near the transportation corridor, so people aren't having to ride back and forth. But yeah, infrastructure is critically important to have a long-term view.
I want to piggyback off something you said, that like the older roads on the east side of 95, yeah, maybe they're 20, 22 feet wide. So what? It works, right? And so I've noticed, and again, it's everywhere. Like you can look at the parcel map for the city of Hayden along main corridors, and you have these enormous right-of-way takes, and they vary. And the reason they vary is because the transportation plan changed twice before they even built the project, right? And if they were to take that whole corridor and project it through Hayden Avenue, Government Way, you try to take 120-foot right-of-way and put it in there, well, now you're tearing down houses and businesses and all of that kind of stuff. Let's maybe scale it back. You know, do we need all of that? Why don't scale back the design to what's realistically attainable?
You just said something here. Looking into the future, you mentioned Hayden Avenue, you said maybe scale it down. In 20 years, how many lanes do you think Hayden Avenue will need?
So going by the transportation plan, some of that's about access management and and how many turning movements are allowed, but I think I was looking at the section in between,
Atlas and Ramsey, we did that exercise.
did we? Yeah, and
There's only 2 or 3 problematic parcels if you get a 5-lane section in there. There's only 2 or 3 that are truly problematic.
but there were sections on.
Two in a center turn line. Right.
Yep, 2 in the center turn lane, but there's a portion of Hayden Avenue where it's between Atlas,
And Ramsey?
oh, the other way, what's the other way? Yeah,
No,
maybe
it's Atlas
Carrington.
and Ramsey.
Okay. But there is a portion where if you had 1 lane each way, and just by adding that 3rd lane, the volume to capacity ratio was just fine, projected into 2040 with all of this growth.
With a center turn lane.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, when you start adding on swales on both sides, multi-use path, bike paths, sidewalk, do we really need all that? What is it right now? It's 2 lanes.
So you need the right of way. I mean, that's one thing you gotta project. What you build and when is you build it as they come, but you need to get that right of way locked down for your 5-lane.
But if there are those problematic areas, Eric and I were talking about this, where you don't want to tear down that house that's been there since the 70s. So you swing a sidewalk closer to the road and you don't get the street side swale there. You distribute that stormwater to an area where you got a bigger right of way and you get a little creative with the design.
Yeah, design flexibility, absolutely.
The mayor says it's my turn. I've got some questions that I'd like to pose to everybody, and I'm going to make some statements. So it's going to bounce around a little bit, but I want to start off with, my wife and I attended the University of Idaho. We met, and we moved to Coeur d'Alene when there was 1 red light in town. And we've lived in Hayden for 43 years, raised all our kids. So I've got a little long-term view of our city and where it was and where it's at now. When we looked at buying a house, after we rented in Coeur d'Alene for a while, we couldn't afford Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Rathdrum, or Hayden. The prices were out of what we could qualify. We had to get what was called an IHA loan. Some of you may know what that is. It was to help you with your down payment. We had to go back to Spirit Lake.
And when was this?
1970, 77, 78.
Yeah.
So, but we could not afford to buy in this area, so we had to move out. So I know that there's been comments about our kids can't live here. I couldn't afford to live here when I first moved here. I had to move out. We eventually did move here into Hayden in 1981. I know that's not the infrastructure question here, but I just wanted to point it out because it's been brought up about affordable housing and how and I get it that we have an issue with finding people that can work. I mean, look at all the businesses that are looking for employees and they can't find them because they can't afford to live in this area. I get that. I'm not going to talk about how to solve that problem. I'm not sure how that solution is going to be fixed because it's so market driven. I'm not sure how that, but I will say that Maggie and I had a great coffee for 2 hours. And one of the things she did bring up about making possibly more affordable housing. If Hayden had a impact fee, we have impact fees for parks, roads, and what am I missing? Sewer. No, we had those at cap fees.
Law enforcement one, but we don't.
No, it's parks.
I think it's only public safety. Don't we have the
We had circulation and parks, and at one time we had public safety, but we're not doing it. So the impact fees, are one of the ways that we can have income come in to help solve our road issues. Right now, our road issues, the capital projects, and I'll get back to what Maggie told me because but I diverse because it took. Yeah, that's what happens when you get close to 70. So sorry. But Maggie, I'll go back to what Maggie said. Maggie said, I like the idea where we have cap fees. That when you take out your building permit, you have to pay for your cap fees for your sewer, the delivery and for the hookup and for the sewer plant. If we could take those cap fees and somehow we're in the same development that some houses would have maybe 10% of the cap fee that would be paid, but then all that 90% would be added on to the other homes. So it would give a differential in price that may make it more affordable. We would still get the money that we require for the cap fees, but it just puts more burden on the higher priced homes. I like that idea because we can't afford not to get our income. That's where I'm going to go right now. We are so behind on capital projects to fix roads, to get our stop signs or roundabouts. I mean, we've been working on Ramsey and Honeysuckle for years. The public right-of-way that we have to purchase is those are millions of dollars. We don't have the money. My first question to the crowd, how do we pay for it?
Sponsorship. What? Businesses and communities can sponsor them. What?
So.
And this roundabout sponsored by.
So, I mean, because I have to tell you.
Water,
I did have coffee with a large developer about how do we pay for the issues we have now. We can't fix what we have now. How can we continue to move forward on projects when we can't afford to fix the problems? How do we pay for it? And I also had coffee with one of the real estate owners, and I asked them, you guys are a lot smarter than me. You know, give me input. And that's what I'm asking you. How do we pay for this?
I've got a solution, or a potential solution. So I'm Ray Kimball. I do a lot of civil engineering for a lot of developers. I also sit on the planning commission in Post Falls. So the answer in 3 words is public-private partnership. And I'm going to give you an example. I did a project in Post Falls this summer, and we built a 2-lane roundabout on Prairie Avenue. Everyone hates it, but it was part of the city's transportation master plan, and the city of Post Falls had $2.4 million in their budget for it. It's a cap fee project, and we built it for under $900,000. So they got.
Who's we?
We as in specifically Jackson Land Company, but the adjoining developer. So we designed it and built it in the span of 6 months. And the city reimbursed 100% out of the cap fee budget. So 100% reimbursed project. And so the city got, what, $1.5 million in essentially savings by partnering with a developer, and they got the infrastructure done now, before. So, and everyone's all fired up about it because, you've got this roundabout here, there's nothing next to it. Well, yeah, I know, I get it. But there are businesses that are coming, and they're gonna use those approaches, and that's the whole thing. It's prior proper planning, and it's either you get it done now, before you private-public partnership, you get it done now, and now there's you're ahead of the game. Because when you collect traffic impact fees, so one, you're gonna pay your engineering company 30% right off the top for design and construction management. Now, we don't charge that, Eric doesn't charge that. We would love to charge that, but we can't. But cities pay it, that's what it is, that's what those guys charge. I get it, it's their business model. But, the fact is that, you guys are always behind the 8 ball when it comes to impact fees. Impact fees are there not for the big projects, but they're there essentially to capture the little guys. The 10-lot subdivision that if you do a traffic study for it, has 0 measurable impact to the city, but 15 10-lot subdivisions has a measurable impact. So that's what those are there to capture. When you guys have there's a traffic impact study out there for a larger development, and it says, okay, yep, that intersection's already failing, this one's at D, this one's at E, and you're gonna cause, your incremental impact is gonna cause those to fail, and this one's already horrible, and let's see what we can do to fix it. Well, generally speaking, most developers want to be treated fairly, okay? They're happy to fix problems because they understand that the people on the other end, people who are living in those homes after they develop, are gonna be pissed off if they can't get out of their driveway. So it doesn't work for, if they can't get out of their driveway in phase 1, then phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 aren't gonna sell either. So they understand that there's a lot of benefit to this, and there's a lot of benefit to public-private partnership. Do they want to pay more than their fair share? No, but what they can offer is they can offer, 60 to 70 cents on the dollar by actually building the infrastructure that the city would have to pay, 30% more just in engineering fees.
So are you saying that and you're speaking for maybe some developers that...
Speaking for, I've worked for all kinds of developers in many jurisdictions, and I'm not speaking for any one in particular.
Right, but are you saying in general they'd be willing to pay more than impact fees to help alleviate the problems that we're trying to catch up? I mean, remember, if we were starting, we had everything taken care of to current conditions, it's different. We're still trying to catch up from years of development.
I don't think any one developer is going to say, I want to fix the city's problems out of the goodness of my heart and out of the goodness of my pocket.
No, but are they willing to pay for some of that is my question.
What I am saying is that one of the benefit of the public-private partnership is the cost increment between the city sponsoring a project and a developer sponsoring a project, because there's a huge gap there. And that gap in savings, so let's say the city has a $2 million roundabout, right-of-ways there, or is available, and the developer goes, yeah, I'll design it, put it, and just build it. And bid comes in, and you guys reimburse me out of my report, so impact fees, I'll pay my impact fees, okay, no problem, but we'll do it, and you got whatever you guys got in your pot, so you got your pot of money right now, just reimburse me. We'll do an agreement. And so we get it out, get a bid, get a number, come to an agreement, say it's $1 million, whatever it is. But there's a savings for the city where you had X number of dollars, so you had $1 million or $2 million budgeted, and it comes in at $1 million. There's a savings for the taxpayer, for the citizens of the city of Hayden, in that scenario where the developer is using their ability to do things quickly and efficiently, and not have to go through all of the hoops that come with a capital improvement project, and they're horrible. That's why I don't do capital improvement projects.
So I think we need to look into that possibly. That's a great idea.
But if the city is costing $2 million and you can do it for $1 million, I'm saying someone's got to buy the land, the right of way to put in the roundabout. I mean, how does that, I'm trying to understand.
I don't think we're going to solve that tonight, but we need to look into this. I think it's a good idea.
There's a lot of options there.
Now, we also have not only a road issue, we have a sewer treatment issue. And since I do sit on the Hayden Area Regional Sewer Board, I think the number of residential hookups we have currently is, at least as last month, about 700. And I brought this up in city council meeting. We have planned residential units that exceed that by a lot. So we just initiated a contract to determine what is exactly our capacity. And then hopefully, I think we'll look into what development is in the pipe so we can figure out, well, at this point, we don't have any or we need more, because it takes a while to plan and upgrade. We just spent $22 million to do a regulatory upgrade to the sewer plant. That was based on what we can discharge in the Spokane River. Associated with that, we're actually having discussions because the EPA and DEQ are putting such stringent regulations and monitoring that we will have to do on our water discharge in the Spokane River, that it may be way beyond our cost to where we're going to have to start to do just land apply. We land apply the liquid sewage after it's treated. We have biosolids and liquid. We land apply. We own about 300 acres on the prairie. And so we may have to eventually do all land application, which means somehow in the winter, we're going to have to store it and then land apply it. McCall, Idaho has that situation. So in other words, we have another large possible cost to upgrade our sewer plant. My question is, who should pay for that? We have roads issue, we have a sewer issue, and then I'm going to segue into this. Has everyone seen this? This is our citizen survey that we had. We surveyed our folks in Hayden, and I think about 1,100, 1,200 people responded. My question is, we as city council members and the mayor, should we listen to what they have to say? That's a question.
Is it a representative sample?
Yeah. It's a scientifically, with a deviation of 2 or 3% or whatever, it is a scientifically conducted survey. And I guess if you answer yes, then there's some issues in here that we have to incorporate in our comp plan. Because who should be driving our comp plan? The people of Hayden? That's another question. I saying yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
They're the ones who pay the bills.
The taxes, right?
Yeah.
So who should be driving our future?
The citizens that live here.
Right. So I think that it's important.
We work for them.
It's important
It's not
that,
incumbent upon us to make executive decisions by fiat.
Well, you also have to have an informed citizenry that is actually getting the proper
Amen.
information.
But I'm just
not
saying,
listening to what their.
You can't say, oh, our citizens are too dumb. I'm just gonna make this law.
Yeah.
pardon?
They tie this into infrastructure, I feel like we're in a bit of a rabbit hole.
Well, yeah, because it deals with roads and growth, which is directly what we're talking about. And that's why this becomes important. If you haven't seen it, builder, developer, I suggest that you get a copy of that. Let's see. One of the questions I do have for builders and developers, I'm getting dry mouth. Do you feel that the city of Hayden is collecting too high of fees and cap fees and impact fees? Yes. How do we pay for stuff if you think we're charging too much?
Well, I think you're missing the fact that Hayden's levy rate, they were so proud of that levy rate for so long. Infrastructure eventually will always fail. It will always need to be upgraded. And this incremental growth was going to lead to the need for upgrading of your infrastructure. If you just say, and I think it's a misinformed position, that it's this latest wave of development that brought us to this critical failure point, I just think that's wrong. It was incrementally moving to this point of failure where the roads were going to need to be widened, sidewalks were going to need to be added. We were incrementally getting here. I think you're vilifying this latest wave of development to say growth must pay for growth. Growth must pay for growth. We were already getting there. To your point with the sewer, if the DEQ and everybody says no more discharge into the city, all the people pre-2020 were going to have to foot the bill to land apply it somewhere. It's not just this last 4 years that made DEQ say no more into the Spokane River.
Right, but you made the comment we were charging too high of fees. How do we pay for it?
I think Ray brought up some good points. I think Eric and I have run the exercise. If you take Hayden Avenue and we give your city engineer a plan set, and he said, because I've sat in this room and upstairs in so many pre-development meetings with the redevelopment of a parcel, I need 45-foot half width on this section. Period, end of story, boom, You give it up if you do the development. Go on to Kootenai County GIS and look at all the little blue lines. And to Eric's point, you're gonna see what looks like a Tetris board, where they took 90 feet here, then the transportation plan changed, we took 70 here. If you just gave it to somebody, I don't mean this to sound denigrating at all, if you just gave it to a 10-year-old with a ruler and said, scale me a road if I need 5 lanes, 4 of which need to be 12 feet, the center one needs to be 14 feet, and I need 5-foot sidewalks and 10-foot swales. They would draw you a perfect picture and there'd be a few pinch points. And then they'd say, okay, give me a solution on how to do that. And they're like, well, this little area right here, if we could just do away with that and we swung the sidewalk in here, now you're not paying $1 million or $22 a square foot for commercial frontage land because of your point that we need to get the right of way. And I'm telling you, there's no dumb answers. Right? I've been in real estate now 8-9 years. I've been in building for 20.
So you made a point, we have a low levy rate. We do. That's part of the problem. We can't keep up with the problems we have now. And if the builder developer thinks we're charging too much for our impact fees and cap fees, how do we fix this? That's the question. That's the ultimate question I have in mind. How do we fund this?
The population does need to be educated.
So do you mean we should increase our taxes?
That's the bottom line, okay? I'm sorry, but the conflict we have is here is, do we listen to the people? And they're almost always going to tell you, even those who understand that, yeah, we have to do this. Do we listen to them, or do we give the developers a credits or breaks or whatever it is that they feel that they need so that they can make their margins and make it profitable for everybody involved? And as far as that's the bottom line, and nobody wants to say it, especially elected people. Okay, and I've said this several times in meetings lately. What we're talking about here is coming because of our low levy rate, which everybody is acknowledging. Okay, and I sense when I talk to people, they know it, but they don't want to acknowledge it. We're coming to the point, well, you know, and I like the private-public partnership as best as that can be worked out. I think we need to look into it. The bottom line is, yes, the people now who have just come, and those who have been here for 30 or 40 years and enjoyed the levy rate, we're going to have to come to a hard point of how do you do it? By levy or whatever, do you want to increase the taxes to get these things we need, or do we just kind of let them rot away? But the bottom line is, there's only a couple ways to come up with more money.
Matt, you can throw your questions.
Yeah.
I'm done.
I got one really quick thing to say. So one, and like I think it's two-pronged, is that citizens of Hayden have been getting a great discount for a long, long time. Discounted lunch, maybe it's time to go a little more full price for the infrastructure. But also, I think most of the developers that I work for, they want to be treated fairly. They don't want to be singled out. They want the guy down the road who has got 1 building permit or 2 building permits to pay the same amount that they do. They don't want to feel like they're getting screwed over. And if the cost of the impact fees goes up, and it's fair and it's justified by the proper studies, and the cap fees fair and justified with proper studies, if that's all done, great. It adds on to the price of the house. And, you know, that's the other end of it. So, you know, there's cake and eating it too on the affordability side. But, I mean, the reality is that I think, for the most part, you know, they want to use their property. They want to develop it. They want to, how many of these developers have had a track record in the city of Hayden where a large portion of the city of Hayden, the people who live there, live in houses that they built. And so, yeah, those people, they just want to be treated fairly. And so when it comes to, is it tax rate? Yeah. I mean, city of Hayden, your traffic infrastructure will, like, I hate to say it like this, but like looking into my crystal ball as an engineer, your traffic infrastructure will fail if you stop doing all development, just call it done today, forever. Your infrastructure will fail based on all the surrounding communities you're driving through. I mean, absolutely 100% inundated and fail. And it's backed up by your traffic impact, or your traffic transportation master plan. Basically says, hey, it's all gonna fail. You guys do nothing, still gonna fail. So, you know, it's great that we're having this conversation because we can have, I feel like I can have an open, honest conversation with you guys and not feel like I'm representing a client being a henchman. Because I want to come, I want to come to the solution, because the reality is that, you know, I live in Post Falls, but I like Hayden. I like to drive. I got friends that live in Hayden. Like, this is great. Like, I don't want Hayden to become what's seriously going to amount to you know, roads littered with potholes that you can swim in 20 years. Because you don't have the tax base and infrastructure to keep up with everything. Like, no one wants that. No one does. And it's just a harsh reality pill that I think a lot of people are going to have to take, and it sucks to be you as elected officials to have to administer that pill or try to. And that's all I think. That's done. Sorry. Thanks.
You guys good then?
Yep.
Thanks.
This for me?
That's mine, but you can, if you want that, you can have it. Oh, perfect. Yeah, because I can get another one.
You probably, Gordon, you can look through that, but go to the website, or you can manipulate them. When you get into these, when you get into a lot of different things.
Can we hold off on that?
Yeah, I'll get you up.
I'm going to go ahead and close up the meeting. I think a lot more than just nice talk was had tonight. I heard a number of hard solutions that could be presented, and I sincerely want to invite our guests to come back, maybe get together. If it's 60 days, 90 days, I'm not going to put a time on you. If there are some things our city can be doing better, I want to hear about it. I mean that. And I don't think it's destiny that we can't do things. I think smart people would come together and there's an old expression I have, if you can't find a way, make it. And I think we can make ways, and I think we have enough smart people in the room that can realize things. I don't know everything as the mayor. Lisa has been working as a city administrator for decades. She doesn't, 3 months, no.
No, I just collectively, it's only 3 months here.
The point is, she doesn't know everything, but there are enough people in the room, there are enough of the right people in the room. I mean, even what I heard tonight about Hayden Avenue, and maybe there's some great thing we can do and get it expedited and get it going. Maybe there are better ways for us to build traffic circles, to plan for sewer improvements, whatever it is. We've talked about a lot of things, almost too many things. It almost becomes this elephant sandwich, but I know if we take one bite at a time, we can eat the elephant. So thank you again for coming out. I really look forward to your feedback collectively, and drive safe. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to say meeting adjourned?